We'll wait until it's straight up.
I can scoot over.
Okay, it's now 6 o'clock. We're going to call the City of Carlton budget meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, all right, Mayor Linda Watkins,
Here.
Council President Shirley Ward-Mullen,
Here.
Councilor Kevin Skipper,
Here,
He's trying.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
His mouth is
He's
moving.
waving. He's waving to you.
all right, here we go. All right, Councilor Jeremy Brendel,
Here.
Councilor Grant Erickson. Not here yet, Councilor Carolyn Thompson Riser,
Present,
Carolyn.
I'm present.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. It's like,
Yeah.
hi. Okay.
And now we can
Councilor
even see you.
David Samuel Hill,
Here.
right? Budget Committee Member Brian Reek,
Here.
Dean Catherman. Absent. Excused. Counselor or Committee Member Sarah Meyer. Here. Committee Member Randy Staples
Here.
and Committee Member Robin Geck.
Here.
Still here? Perfect.
Mhm.
I missed that.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the election of the Budget Committee Chairperson. I understand that we are nominating Brian Rake. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Abstain? Okay, I didn't, yeah, opposed. No, I didn't mean nay. Don't,
It's all yay.
I just remembered what I was saying, yeah. Okay, so we are turning the meeting over to Committee Chair Brian Rake.
Thank you, Rita. So it is now 6:03 p.m. and I open the public hearing on fiscal year 24's proposed use of state revenue sharing funds. Is there a staff report?
There is. Historically, the city of Carlton has used the state revenue sharing fund, which is about 40,000 per year, and designated it towards the street fund as a source of revenue. With this source of revenue, we've been able to do some small transportation and street projects, and staff is recommending that we continue to give the street fund that revenue stream.
Okay.
Excuse me, is there a reference to this in the book?
Yes, there is. It will be, you'll see it in the street fund, and I'll talk about it again there. The designated funds.
So we're not voting on this yet.
No, the purpose of this public hearing is to have staff recommend and have the public have an opportunity to voice their opinion on those funds. That will be voted on at the regular council meeting in June.
Any other comments or questions? All right, this time we'll open the public testimony portion of the hearing to receive any comments or input from the public. If you wish to speak, raise your hand or use the hand raise function on Zoom and wait for your name to be called. Once called, please state your name and address. So is there anybody that wants to say anything?
I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, we will close the public testimony and hearing at 6:04 p.m. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the budget committee minutes from May 12th, 2022. I will entertain a motion.
I move that the minutes from of the budget committee from May 10th, 2022 be approved. as presented.
I have one question on that, on the motion for Catherine and Ward Mullen to nominate and appoint Catherine as vice chair. Was that, he was supposed to be chair and vice chair? For some, I thought that you were nominated
As vice chair.
as
Mhm.
vice chair, but it states Dean Catherine as vice chair.
So we will, if you approve the notes, minutes with those changes, we'll make sure that those get changed.
Shall I restate the motion?
Yes.
I move that we approve, the budget committee approve, the minutes from the May 12th, 2020. No, May 10th, 2022, the budget meeting with, the change to, remove Dean Kaufman as, the vice chair and replace with David Samuel Hill.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. Now staff will present a proposed budget message and department presentation.
Excuse me.
Excuse me,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
I just, one more thing, I'm looking at the minutes here, that's what kind of threw me for a second, because at the top it says May 12th, 2021.
Oh,
It is not supposed to be that, it's supposed to be 2022's minutes. So are the 2022 minutes in there?
It states in these minutes that we approved the May 11th, 2021, so I think it's, yeah.
I think it's a clerical error.
So this is just in there by
Yeah.
mistake, okay, all right, thank you.
Because the footer actually says May 10th, 2022, so I think the header was not changed. I think you're correct. We will, change the header.
all right, so now staff will present both budget message and department presentation.
So I will be doing the budget. You'll be hearing me speak extensively. Department heads are not here tonight. There's no capital outlay requests. Most of our budgets can be centered around capital improvement fund. We do have Assistant Public Works Director Ben Jones online, but he's here as an observer for a first budget. So you guys ready for me? So the first thing I want to take you to is our total budget, and that's on page 26. And you have the budget breakdown by fund, and you're gonna hear this pretty predominantly throughout the budget. As you can see, we're way outweighed in our total budget of 38 million, by 26 of that sitting in the capital improvement fund, which is on the end, with second being the SDC's revenues from our developments. And then following that is water fund, and then general fund would be the next. All the rest are pretty small in nature. Sewer will be at about 1.4 million. And we'll talk about these individually, but seeing it graphically, you can see what we're ahead for this year. We have a very heavy project year. And this is just a quick glance at what that looks like in a graph. And then if you'll turn to the budget message, which is page 28. We'll be talking about this budget message throughout the documents as I go through the funds. But I do want to do a quick little summary, so I'm not repeating on all the materials, all the personnel costs. And throughout all of the funds do have an increase this year. Our PERS rates are going up 4%. Our employee health insurance is going up 9%. The cost of living is 5.9. That we don't determine that. That comes off of the Lane Council of Governments. They publish it. Our workman's comp has no increase. It's level. We switched to SAFE. We had a savings last year, and this year it's remaining. Our audit was almost spot on when they came in this year. And then despite all the inflationary increases that you're going to see throughout this, the city still is being a good fiscal steward, and I'll talk about it as we go through the funds.
We're only going to be increasing by 7.32%. And just an example, we just found out our property and liability insurance for the city through our insurance carrier is going up 23%. PG has rates of 14%. So we have a big year of inflationary increases, not just personnel, but all across the board. So with that being said, the message is going to be consistent. We worked hard to have a tight, frugal budget this year. We know we're heavy in capital improvement fund, and I'll talk about that pretty extensively when we get there. But this message goes through all the budget. Everything we've done is tight. We've talked to staff. It's not that we can't support it fiscally, but the city likes to keep about a 20% contingency. And to do that, we're trying to maintain either a little reduction or status quo. You'll see one of them, the PGE is so increased, and that's streets. And I'll talk about that in streets. There'll be a little bump. The city's also been working hard about transparency. As you know, if you go to the city website, well, most of you, some of you may not, every day, anything we spend or receive in revenue is posted. You can view that at any time, so that if any citizen ever has questions, that's always a good thing to get them to that website so that they know that anything we're doing is on there. We're working on some capital projects on the website as much as our staffing can handle. I have to tell you, one of the reasons we're fiscally responsible, we are doing, this staff is small comparative to the amount of work that is being brought forth to the city. So sometimes we're taxed. We have an amazing council that has been really stepped up, and it's been huge for us. But just the grants alone, and I'll talk about that when I get to capital improvement fund, to administer these grants is extensive on staff, and to make sure we get the reports and the funds flowing. You have to have that equal flowing as you're spending and coming in. So you have to be very timely. So with that being said, I'm not going to go over each fund because I'm going to go through them individually as we go through. So I won't be going through the highlights in that particular component. So first thing I'd like to do is go to general fund revenues, page 41. So we have a brief glimpse at our revenues, and then we have by category. You'll see that our personnel services are 45%, which is really good for general fund. Typically that runs between 40 and 60% of cost of general funds. So we've got that relatively low. We're not adding any positions. We're just absorbing as much as we can. We have a little bit of having to offer some staff some comp time just because we're on overload for work, but they usually take that for time off rather than a monetary compensation. On page 42, general fund is starting out with a really good fund balance. I'm just going to highlight a few things. One is the interest, and this is going to be in particular of note for all of you, as this will be our first year of debt service for the Civic Center. Right now, our interest for general fund, water and sewer is $7,000 a month because it's the money sitting there. That will dissipate as we get further, but all that interest is helping support revenue to help balance with the expenditure of this first year debt service. But as we spend it down, that interest will go down, but they just increase the interest rate again, the treasury. Yes.
Where is this? This is on page 42.
Yes, I'm talking about the interest line. So typically our interest for general fund is 7,000, 6,000. This year it's coming in at 40,000, and I slated it for 35 because we'll still have significant funds for probably a good 6 more months. And just those funds for a year at that interest rate is about 84,000.
How will that compare to years going out? Is it smaller than years upcoming or about the same?
It will be still high coming up, but then we will go back to normal, and that interest rate is going to be between 7,000 and 10,000, depending on what the treasury is charging us at the time. When all those interest rates dropped, our interest received did drop. Right now it's on the opposite spectrum, but we're going to budget frugally for that change. And we keep an eye on it. Just today I was reading through the interest stuff that comes, the Treasury sends me daily information on that. So it will fluctuate depending on what our government does. The other thing I want to point out is the swim pool receipts of the 45,000. So I want to talk strongly about this. It was hard for me to budget. I don't know if we're going to be able to open the pool. So I put in, if we are able to do the pool, but I did it on a basis of some limited hours, depending on who we get certified, if we get enough certified to get those doors open. We are starting to get applications, but none of them are certified. So until they're certified, we can't open that door. Right now, we know we've got 3 actively getting their certifications. But we're dealing with 15 to 17-year-olds that, so if the pool does not open, go ahead.
Oh, Amy mentioned at our last meeting that person from where, I can't remember where, could come in and certify them here rather than taking classes elsewhere.
That is correct. And the city will do that. They still have to be able to get certified by a written test. So there is many things. And then we have contact with a lot of colleges. We ask colleges to provide us some guards. We talked to Joni Anderson to get some ideas. We have beat the streets, and we do have some applications now. They're very young. We've got 3 experienced, but nobody is officially certified at this moment. So how I budgeted was limited hours, reduced revenue, and then I have expenses in pool when we get there. But if that pool doesn't open, that revenue will be gone, but it'll be offset by the expenses that the pool would have undergone. Public Works, though, is still going to open it up, open the boilers, get everything ready, hoping that we get to do it. And if anything, it's a good clean, put it away for the winter. But this is a very real thing for us right now. And we want the pool open. So we'll do whatever it can. So the revenue and the expenses were set as a balance. And then hoping we get it right. When you're doing a budget, you're taking all your scenarios and you're really trying to focus on what does this mean for the city just this next year? What's it mean for the next? We've got, we need to get some youngins in to groom them to keep coming back as the pool guard and get some experience. We just kind of outgrew our guards, but it isn't the city of Carleton. Tualatin's offering bonuses. All the pools are really struggling. The colleges said the same thing. Western University would have a really good swim program. They are struggling equally as so. So we've really done the outreach. So I just wanted to let you know that will fluctuate.
If the pool does not open, what is the relative balance between income and outgo? Does the city, in net gain or lose?
The city will lose either opening or not opening. We will lose less if the pool does not open.
You lose less if the pool does not open.
Yes. Because we'll be on a limited capacity, but opening on full steam. The other thing of note is under fines and forfeitures. It's our best guess on how much the police department's going to get for that grant. So one year it was 38. This last year it was 30. So we're thinking about 35-ish, kind of going mid-ground, but this will go against their overtime as it comes in. So that is our best guess. Everything else is pretty close. We've got a little bit more revenue, only about 150,000 more coming in. But it is more going to be our taxes is our driving cost. So, and then our interest is throwing us off. So I want to do something a little different because I've got a lot of new faces. So I wanted to talk, we're going to start going into department. And the first department is administration, which is page 44. And then I got thinking about it. What do you guys think of when you think of administration? What is an administration? Some of you know because you are here all the time, but some people don't. So administration houses our city manager. It houses our attorney costs, almost a good portion of the attorney costs. If the attorney's working on a water plant project, we code his bill accordingly to his work, but it comes here. It is our city council. It's our committee fees. For example, the council is getting tablets in a couple weeks, and those were budgeted for last year. And it resides in here. So it's our council. It has professional services. It also has our community grants and our community outreach. So community outreach is a multitude of things. It's sending out information, advertising, trying to get some stuff. So it's when we're talking to the community as a whole, and that has some type of cost. And then the community grants, we set that and we get applications and we award that in March. So that's what administration is. Administration also houses the transfers that general fund's going to make for the year. And this year there is only one transfer, and that is for $22,749. That's the second payment of the police vehicle. And then one payment will remain for last year, and then that's done. This year, the city hall, for the first time in a while, will not be sending money over for the capital improvement fund for facilities and special projects, because our special project is underway. And general fund they shared a third of that cost, but they no longer need to be a part of that equation.
So why this number is significantly less for 23-24 versus
Yes, so the
2021?
transfer, so proposed, it's 180,000 for total requirements, where last year we adopted 311,000. So you're seeing some changes there, but you'll see some other changes as we go to the next department, which is finance, page 46. So finance was free of debt service in 2021. This is their first year of debt service for the Civic Center. That payment's $227,815, and that will be going over to the debt service fund, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But finance houses our billing, our software. They often water, sewer, and finance split costs. So when we're talking split costs, it's professional services, the merchant bank fees, sometimes some of the supplies and maintenance, professional services, IT, software. It splits equally between the three funds, because our team here is the administration of water and sewer funds. So our billings, we just sent out the water quality report as required by the state in our water bill. That would split 1/3 into the finance department, to kind of give you an example. So the computer, we're gonna have one replacement computer coming through. It's a shared cost between the three funds, $4,000, and that was included up above in materials and services. But there's really nothing of note. Here last year, we adopted 135,000. We're coming close. It's 137,800, and that's mostly for the emergency fee changes. So we'll be, and our audit, we're projecting it. We're going to have, because of all our grants, we by audit standards, if you get federal money, you have to have a single audit, and that single audit can range from 7,000 to 10,000. It has to have its own book. It cannot be audited with our normal audit. So, and that's to be determined after we get
Where is
that
the
done.
cost? So when I was looking at this, I saw that for the one computer replacement. Where is the cost for the council computers or notepads?
That was in the previous budget, and that was under committees in the administration. So it was in that cost in the adopted on page 44, it would have been under committee fees, and we adopted 18,000, and we've now reduced it down to 15.
Okay,
And we want to make sure that we are providing, like when you go to training, we pay for those things, it comes out of that. Or if you have to travel for a conference, that's where that sits for council. So that is it for finance, and then we're going to go to the planning on page 48.
In these first two areas, are there any changes in personnel?
No changes in personnel. We have no changes in personnel at all in the city, if that helps.
Anywhere in the city?
Yeah, nowhere in the city, no changes. So, page 48 is planning. So planning is, a lot of engineering goes there, like what, I'll give you an example, JR Meadows. That's gonna sit here, pre-conferences, attorney fees. We break this out to keep an eye on it. The code development is sitting in here. And JR Meadows is just a project. So often we have people come for pre-conferences that involve our engineer and involve our public works, and it never comes to fruition. But it still bears a cost for us, which we have a charge for that pre-conference, and that's why we charge, because we are bearing some personnel services. So this ebbs and flows depending on projects. Our engineering is still staying relatively high. Our code development is still underway and will cross over into next year. We're still proposing less than we did the year before because a lot of the code development was done on one side, but we still will bear some costs on this side. So it does show lower in this particular instance. And then our planning person in the admin staff, part of their salary is ratioed to here.
The distinction between engineering services and professional services, between the city engineer and the planning services, or something
Yes.
else?
Nope, it's a good question. So engineering is gonna be our engineer, which is Tetra Tech, or something like that. Professional services, surveys. 3J, that is currently running our code development. And planning services that we're contracted with COG right now, and they come through here. So it's heading, three things can hit that. So anything that's professional or contracted goes in there. So next is the police department, and that is page 50. So we did reduce the police department's overtime, but that will change with an appropriation change depending on the grant they receive. If they receive a grant for the traffic enforcement, which they apply for every year, but it was too soon to tell. The 25 is for, they're always being called in for things. Like, for example, when there was the 8 burgs, all 4 were called in to solve that. So if a big thing happens, it's to have that emergency base. The rest of their salary is just based on standard salary, no additions to the police department. We are proposing that they stay at the same level, no increase from the last year's adopted. We're holding it true, and they're doing no capital outlay.
What about cost of living?
Cost of living's in their personnel.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yes.
that
But just no merit
But
increase.
even then, we refined the numbers, and it's a little bit less than the cost of living because the estimates for workman's comp came in lower. So we were able to save a little money there. Police departments usually take 40 to 60% of the general fund. And just recently they had an article, sheriff's was, how much was it? 70%. Ours is 37%. So we're under any averages. They do a good job of really trying to watch where their material and expense is going. Right now, we're a little off on their estimates are coming in a little low because the ammo is slow to be delivered, and we're not sure if it's going to land on this side of the fiscal year or the next side of the fiscal year. Whenever there are mass casualty incidents, the ammo pushes out for lead times, if that makes any sense. So police department is staying relatively close to the same, except for a small increase in personnel. And thank you, SAFE, for giving us better rates.
Just a quick question. When you were saying the sheriff was 70% versus 37,
7%.
are you talking about contracted services, or are you just talking about
No.
the sheriff department?
Sheriff department for the Yamhill County budget, for
Oh,
the
okay.
county's budget is 70%
70% of their general fund.
70% of their
Okay.
general fund. Ours is 37% of the general fund.
Okay.
So
Does our police department, I know that this is a little finite look into things, but does our police department partner with other agencies to do group buys to get the cost down?
They did, like the police radios, I was gonna talk about that when I got the vehicle improvement fund. They worked with Newberg and Mac. And they got a group buy and got a really good deal on the radios. They do on those circumstances. Newberg works really well with Carlton, so does Mac PD and the sheriff's department, but more partnering on larger equipment usually involves all of them. Mac PD actually purchased theirs first. They encrypted their radios before the rest of the forcing the hand on all, which is why we had to, the radios were 95,000 just for our small department. So can you imagine the sheriffs and all of them taking that big brunt? We were able to get in on the deal and then get a lease, so it didn't happen all at once and our budget could sustain it. But it could be a driving force to some of our partners if they do some kind of change.
Okay.
But just all the police departments currently are getting cameras. I know if you've been seeing them in the paper, our department's been wearing them for 5 years, so there will be no costs. They're with Axon, who automatically replaces for free the equipment. So they've been, I guess, the guinea pig testers.
With that kind of an approach, is there kind of an annual subscription fee or something like that?
There is.
Is that built into here?
It is in here. It will be under
Dues
dues and
subscription?
subscriptions, yes. So that's where that sits. They have annual fees for that. They have their dispatch annual fees. They do not have to pay towards the vision and CAD system or the AVL, which is the vehicle locator that county uses. They just partner with on that. But yes, it is in there.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this one? Okay. Municipal court. Oh, and I didn't describe what police did because I figured you could do that one. So municipal court on page 52. We had a shift this year. We used to have a judge that came in and we paid him like he was a payroll employee. We now no longer do that because it didn't make sense and we did an RFP. We now have a judge that we contract. So that is a change in this. A municipal court is our municipal court, and then our court clerk, which is Morgan, it does training. She's a court certified jurisdictional something, some fancy title. So Morgan's part of Morgan's salary is sitting here. And the judge is in here. He is very reasonable. He's been a great addition to the team. You got to meet him with the swearing in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice to have a professional. Morgan has to go training once a year. He recommended which one for her to go to. Because she is not police, she's court. So she suspends licenses, she sends the collections letters, she unsuspends. She also does, so parking tickets, the police no longer can run the plate when they give a parking ticket. Used to be you could. It is now, you cannot as an officer run a plate for a parking violation. But Morgan has the authority to log into DMV for a small fee. It's like $1,
10 cents.
10 cents, and run it and get the parking citation out. The officers can no longer do that. It's one of the lockdowns they did. So interesting note. But that Morgan is our court. She sets it up. She works with the judge, creates the letters. He's been a great resource for some template letters. It's a very small department, but mighty, so small and mighty. So that's why there's an increase in the proposed. It works out to, it's going to work out to about 11,000 for the contracted judge. Court costs we pay for, there's 3 major costs. One is every time the officers write a citation, we only get a little tiny bit of that revenue. We have to pay the state and we have to pay Yamhill County. So every time there's a ticket written, she has to send once a month to the sheriffs, yes, Yamhill County and to the state of Oregon, part of that ticket. That's one of the costs. And then we have a court software, Cassell. So that is their three major expenses. The only other is a small training, which Morgan is required to at least go once a year, and the supplies and maintenance are like nothing, so.
Just to back up on the license, running license plates. Not quite sure I get that. You're saying that the police officers are no longer able, if they're, let's say that they encounter a traffic or a parking violation. And they look at a license plate, they cannot then run it. So what then happens? Do they contact her?
They write the citation, leave it on the vehicle with no name or no name. She gets the citation with no name. Morgan can actually go into DMV and pay a fee and get the name of the registered owner, and the ticket is sent.
So
to
the
that.
officers cannot do that, but she can.
That's correct. Because they do not want the police running John Smith and finding out he has warrants and all this stuff for a parking violation, and she's not, it won't be running for warrants. Because when you run as an officer, it tells you who the registered owners are, if they have warrants, if their driver's license and clear. She doesn't see that. All she gets is a name and address.
She gets it, but is she able to communicate whatever she finds back to the police?
No, she does not.
She cannot do that.
Yeah.
Sure, she's not allowed to do that.
I don't think there's a not allowed. It's never a request. She just sends them the ticket and the bill, and they can dispute it. It's more so that they're really trying hard to not have police target vehicles and running the people. Cause when you run that plate out in the field, you get a lot of information. You aren't just getting a name and address, and all she's getting is a name and
But
address.
for other stops, they can do that.
Oh, yeah.
And does it also pick up immigration status?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
So if it's a moving violation,
They
They-
can do those normal.
they can do that.
Yes,
The distinction is between parking and moving.
yes.
And the-
Because for a $25 parking ticket, they don't want you doing something running on that.
Okay.
And on this ticket, it captures the license plate number, so, okay.
And they always have photos and video. So they have documentation for that, but it never comes to fruition. She just sends it to whoever's goes to that plate.
No question. Is that a revenue item for tickets?
It is. It's in the general fund. It's under fines and forfeitures.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Does that include other fines? Like not only police fines, but
No, that is
City.
just police fines, and that's the city's portion of the police fines. Not, it doesn't show the total revenue by a ticket that's generated because she doles it out it goes splits 3 ways.
As opposed to the county and the state.
Yes.
So is that an exact three-way split?
No, there's formulas for both that
It's $50 of every citation goes to the state and $16 of it goes to the county. So, and there's 4 different tiers of citation that a person can get for a violation. Those all have a set price. So even if it's a class A violation, which is $440, only $50 of that goes to state and 16 goes to the county. Same as like a class D violation is $115.
And then the
So
rest of that
On
comes
the other
to
hand,
us.
realistically, you couldn't have an amount that would be any less than than $66.
right. Well, yeah, so they don't let us, so the judge is able to reduce people's fine amounts and he cannot reduce the fine amount less than what we have to appropriate towards this
County
state and
only.
county.
Okay.
So nobody is ever getting out of here with a fine that's less than $66.
It's nice to have the court clerk here to speak to that.
Keep
So,
that in
it
mind.
always eats out of war percentage in a way. Cause we always gonna pay the city and the Yamhill County, or the state and the Yamhill. So we always take it from North Shore. We're giving something, okay?
Yep. Oh, it's just It's the intergovernmental agreements that you do when you're in a municipality.
Okay.
So we were going to parks on page 54. So parks is interesting. It's more of a seasonal type department. During the summer, it's heavy labor, but during the winter, it's not as much unless a tree comes down or some kind of work. You'll see no capital outlay here. The budget is remaining level, even though personnel is up a little bit. Professional services we are not proposing any professional services at this point. The utilities for the park relatively we believe are going to be the same or less, excuse me. But we're kind of waiting to see, we're moving some poles in the park is what I'm told. Garbage service is a little bit more, supplies and maintenance is a little bit more, and professional service of the arborist. So the arborist comes in twice a year. One is the Main Street trees and the other one they select and do some work. That doesn't mean we won't get an unexpected surprise if a tree comes down, where in the ice storm, we had a lot of arborist work, but then FEMA offset that money. So not totally, but a good chunk of it.
Seasonal worker has been zeroed out.
For this year, yes, because we did acquire the previous fiscal year an additional public works staff. And at this point, the public works director felt that we could make do without a seasonal worker this year. And next is pool. We talked about this briefly, and that's page 56. This is all contingent upon the what ifs. So we just have it bare minimum of what we think is going to happen. And then if it does, we've got a budget and appropriation to go with it. If it doesn't happen, this will be offset itself in revenues in the general fund. So there won't be any of the labor. There will be some expense, but I don't know to what degree until we have a final on what's going to happen. And the next, we are going to the street fund, and that is going to be on page 63 is the revenue. So street fund is relatively close to the same. We did have in revenues, our beginning fund balance is a little bit lower, but we had some unexpected surprises when we opened up East Main and found out there was nothing under it but gaping hole. So we had to do a change order on that East Main project and fix it. How we paid for that was through capital improvement fund, part street fund, a little bit of urban renewal, and so we just balanced it out. So that part now is very stable, but it was pretty shocking. I think Shannon shared pictures with a lot of you guys. You didn't get to see them, but when they you can describe what it was when it opened.
It was an old market street that was crumbling, and so even if we paved over it, the street would have failed within a period of time. Not to mention, we found old water lines that were at risk of crumbling the new pavement. They would eventually collapse the base and created sinkholes. So the contractor proactively just dug out the water line. We dug out the old market street, which was a lot of concrete. It had to be removed. And we now have a very stable 1-block road.
So yes,
The rest of
that-
it.
One down.
yes,
1 block.
so that change order was a little bigger, but we split it around. We didn't have to you won't see it in the budget adjustment coming in June because we were able to divide it out and help get that piece paid for. Other than that, you'll see the interest is a little higher than normal, and that will probably be pretty true. Our right-of-way permits, which used to be in the general fund, but because street funds has so little revenue designated to it, That was designated along with the state revenue sharing. They did publish the state revenue sharing. We're gonna get a drink, that they're gonna remain stable. There, we won't get really any increases. For a while there, the marijuana was going crazy, but it's all stable now that it's. So it's they're projecting to be level. The next page is the salary, and then you see the material and services. What I want to point out to you is the second line under material and services, the utility and PGE. So this year, we adopted 26,000. I'm estimating the bill is going to be 39,000 and proposed 45. So I had one of our admin staff and then our public works director, Brian, take a hard look at this. We had an inkling of what it was. But the street lights that we added in the subdivision and the 14% increase for the PGE rates, that is what the difference is. And we are guessing when JR Meadows 3 comes in about how many street lights. So we're kind of ballparking. We've got contingency if we need it. But that is the reason for that significant change, is all the additional street lights we've added to the city.
Are those all night lights?
Christy, I got a question.
They're the street lights that are on, yeah. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, Kevin.
So you're saying that the 14% increase is just the usage of the LED streetlights that are being added out there?
No, it's the additional poles, but PGE across the board on average has raised their rates 14%.
That isn't captured by the developer when they develop? The city pays for those streetlight poles?
Yes, those are the city, we maintain the poles. There are poles.
Right.
We don't we report
Yeah.
the street light.
So
but
we
yes.
pay for the poles?
Yes, the electricity
Is that a statement?
in the pole.
Is that just a normal statewide kind of, because since the poles are usually considered to be the utilities property, it would seem to me that that would be logically their thing rather than cities.
It is, but because they offer a variety of poles that you can choose, I can guarantee you the cheapest poles are those wooden ones that are very attractive that people like in their subdivisions. And on our Monroe Street. So they offer a variety and each pole has a different cost associated to it, but it is a normal statewide fee and there are many cities that actually charge a street light fee on top of their utility bill to try to offset some of those charges that are then, helping the general fund.
Carlton does not charge that.
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Doesn't mean we couldn't.
Does that answer your question, Kev?
A little bit. I understand. It's just a little bit different than what I'm used to. And so I was just kind of wondering, I thought the developer would front the costs for the installation and paying for the poles. And then maybe PG is charging us for the usage. But you're saying that we have to pay for the aluminum streetlight poles when a development comes into town? That just seems a little bit interesting to me. It should be wrapped up into the development charges when they're developing these subdivisions.
But isn't the city required to have a certain number of developments? Like a certain amount out, 20 years or something, like you have to develop. So I assume that that's kind of the cost of doing business.
It is, and then Kevin, this rate increases just the actual rate increase and the additional poles that are now on our system that we're paying for, not the actual cost of the pole is in this number.
I gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. There is some equipment. We had some street camera equipment slated to be done this last year, but we had a sudden change in IT, and so that has been delayed to be on this side of the year. And then the street fund. The only street fund cannot withstand, so water, sewer and general fund split everything 33, 33, 34. Street fund only has a small amount of administrative staff, so they just pay a prorated portion to the general fund for us helping the street fund, and that's the $3,800. So it used to be 3515, but with some inflationary costs that was increased. Then the street fund this year is going to transfer to the capital improvement fund 50,000, and you'll see what we've got going on in transportation. This last year, they were able to transfer over 313,000, which was a huge help. So anything that they end up usually goes to capital improvement for improvements in projects.
You mentioned cameras.
Yes.
Those are included within the street fund, or what
It depends on where it's at. If we're gonna put it for a street view or park view or civic center view, it depends on the purpose of the camera. So this one here was probably going to be an intersection view or down either like a 7th Street. That would be a street. If it wasn't, if it like, we're gonna be putting some cameras down here, and that's gonna be done with Public Works. Water and sewer are gonna split that cost to protect their equipment, because we're gonna monitor their equipment. So the usage of the camera is where we go.
does this have to do with traffic, law enforcement, utilities, or?
It has to do mostly for security, law enforcement, viewing, just like, for example, 2 nights ago, we noticed the slow down signs were missing. And the police were able to pull up the cameras, and we now have 3 people they're working on for that they have on camera. So it was, Public Works and police both house a lot of expensive equipment. So you're gonna see that security for there. The police do use, for example, the 8 burglaries, and we go to that, they did use cameras to actually trail the suspect through and able to identify, and it's a great case. So those downtown cameras are for that safety of that. They're not in the residential neighborhoods, they're more for those traffic corridors.
The arterial area.
Their arterial areas. Yep, so that's kind of, it's not like we don't have a ton, we just have some strategically located. The Civic Center right now has a camera on the construction site. Instead of being on the intersection it typically is, we have it on there for safety for the theft. Like we just had some people, not just, a couple months ago up in the JR Meadows, we had some people trying to do some thievery there. There's no cameras there, but then they asked the neighbors. Neighbors are very good about sharing their camera footage. So the police department have a list of those resources.
I have another
Yeah.
question about streets, if I can.
Yeah.
So in here, I don't see very much, maybe I'm missing it, but where is any line item for repairs? In the street?
So repairs are supplies and maintenance, which is the $40,000 figure.
Okay, and then the follow-up on that is like, I know the street fund is kind of generally low on the priority, but like, when do we start looking at funding that a little bit better, so we're not relying so heavily on grants and things like that to start repairing some streets?
The street fund is the bane of everybody's municipality budgets. It's very difficult. Often it's fees to help support the street fund. We've been lucky so far getting the grants and being able to, the development has been huge, but that is a good question. We will need to, as our other roads fail, think of how we're going to support that by revenue.
Now, when developers are putting in streets, there is an SDC for those, aren't?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep, and that is what is helping us get forward.
yeah.
So street fund also does the sidewalks. So we have sidewalks and street. and it is limited, in their funding.
Can you do SDCs for light poles?
You would have to be written in the master plan. So if it's in the master plan, you can use some SDCs. But in this year, we're gonna be tapping our transportation pretty heavy to get to capital improvement fund and see those figures. But it's a good suggestion. And we're getting ready to do the TSP. So the transportation plan,
And as you said, every city struggles.
very much so.
Streets.
Very much so. I think we were proactive getting the right of way permits moved over there. It really gave us some leeway. We've been getting some good sidewalk repairs and pieces. But I think we're gonna see some big changes with East and West Main. Shannon had a good focus on let's get this fixed and start branching off as we can for finances. And I just think we just get going, but street fund does need extra revenues. Any other questions on streets? All right, then we're gonna go to water, page 67. Oh, sorry, 68.
Yeah.
So, again, we see a high estimate for the interest. I backed it down a little bit as those pay requests down to 20,000. The rate increase is going to be 6%. That is our CPI. It's designated by our code that water and sewer follow the CPI. Last year, we only did CPI, even though the water rate study did show that we should have added to the CPI, but the city chose to wait it out because we were working on some significant grants. And we wanted to see if that would have some impact, because the next water rate study will be next year. And we'll see how the grants are playing out and how that's all going to mesh. So and when they do a rate study, they take all our projects, all the water and sewer, they dump it all in. What are we spending on? How are we doing it? Because the city the reason we have a lot of failure is the city for 52 years, as you know, did not address the rates. They just kept them the same. City of Yamhill actually is struggling with that right now. That they did not do that, and so they've got some infrastructure problems along with us. But you will see that it is in our code, and that is something that we will do. But last year, we did choose to waive what the rate analysis said to add to try to give us a little bit of a breather until we see how the grants are going to play out. And this year is a heavy grant year.
And we did do that in consultation with our rate analyst,
Yes.
based upon what she saw, what we've achieved with the master plan. So we just didn't wave a magic wand.
The master plan really drives us. And it's nice because we're actually getting things done. That's critical. I did talk about the interest. And other than that, that's the really only change in revenue. You will see that they get a transfer in of 50,000, and that's from the SDC fund. And what that is when they do new developments, they get the SDCs include some connection to water and sewer. So, but it goes into the SDC fund. So we are taking some of that to buy the new meters for the new houses, and that's what that 50,000 is. Page 69, this proposed wages are actually lower on this one because the distribution of every public works is spread out between parks, pools, and their salary moves around. But then they turn in timesheets, and by safe standards, we have to code it explicitly. And the way it coded this next year, more of it landed in sewer. You're actually going to see a budget adjustment going into sewer for this year in June. So just trying to guess where they're going to be working and what they're going to do and distributing their salaries across multiple different funds. So we're actually recommending a little bit less.
In their material and services, it's a small increase, mostly where it comes into play is the chemicals. They've had a large chemical increase coming down the pike. And then in their supplies and maintenance, pretty much everything else is pretty close. In their capital outlay, the Civic Center equipment is computer replacement. Their water equipment is for some filter media for the water plant. And I believe it's for 2 more of the pumps to finish it out. So 2 more of the pumps and a snowplow attachment. So the snowplow attachment will go in front of the truck. So when we have ice or snow, they were using the tractors, but this will go on. It's an actual snowplow to be able to move during the storms.
So
And
they can
then,
get up to check,
yeah, and then
so they
the,
can get up to check the,
yes.
Yeah.
And well, just like one big thing we didn't realize is the patrol vehicles were down here.
Mhm.
And then they aren't driving trucks, and their expeditions were able to get up, but they ended up parking it up at City Hall, so they would always be ready. And then they got spikes on their shoes to get up the hill, but thinking these things through on our response. And so Public Works though did a really good job with the tractors, but this is just a attachment that goes in front of the truck.
Mhm.
And then they have, the water meter lease. Oh, sorry.
On water equipment, there is, in just the last couple of years, there was a big boost up from what I can see here. And I can understand how that could fluctuate.
It does.
Do you have an idea of what that looks like going ahead in the years?
I
Are they able to
actually
figure
do.
that out?
We have been able for Public Works to replace a lot of little items that needed replaced, and it's pretty well done. You'll see, well, I'm gonna talk about a transfer here in a minute. They are buying one more thing that's coming down the pike, but it'll be out of the vehicle equipment fund paid for by water and sewer, and that is a vac truck, and they need a new truck. So, and I'll talk about it right now. So that is what you're gonna see from them. Other than that, this is the only thing Public Works out of all their funds is requesting is to finish up the water plant with the filter media and the snowplow, and then the vehicle, if Brian or the Public Works Director can get the truck. What the vac truck, which we are gonna need for the Mercury TMDL, and which, because we have to right now lease a truck to bring it in and suck out the sewer. And then the truck, they're just not to be had out there, these vehicles. So we don't know if the vehicle is gonna come in. We do have, we're working on the vac truck, and we're probably gonna lease it out and break it over 3 years, depending. But the vehicle equipment fund between the water and sewer transfers could support the purchase of one or the other. But I don't foresee unless something breaks.
This truck sounds fairly large and expensive.
They do, yeah, it is. It's a 350. It needs the capability to be able to pull that, but it will save us in the long run because of pulling in and having to rent that all the time.
Know about what the cost is? Or-
Yes, it's gonna be about around 80,000 for the vac trailer. And the truck is probably going to be 70 to 80, probably about 160 for the total. I don't foresee the truck coming in, but again, that will be split over. It won't be all in one hunk.
Actually, we might have guessed more, but okay.
No, it's not a fancy truck. It's just a heavy duty truck. It's, if you ever get in them, they actually roll their windows down. So, it's not fancy. They just need a basic, but they need a 350 to haul the vac trailer, which will be huge.
When you're talking about leasing it out, that's to recover some of our cost and to help with our neighbors.
I'm sorry. We won't lease it out to people. We will be leasing to purchase it. Cause so as a
Oh.
government, we can lease it with no cost, no buyout, and just split the cost over 3 years.
It's a lease purchase.
It's a lease purchase with
Okay.
no additional cost. Sorry, I can see how I confused you on that.
No problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then there transfers 25,000 to the vehicle equipment fund, which is where that purchase for the truck and back trailer will be. There will be transferring 300,000 towards water projects, 50,000 towards facilities and special projects, and that is for anything public works related. If they have a building emergency, the roof collapses in, we're planning for those components, which is why we were able to get their vehicle building accelerated by 2 years for all this movement. And then the debt service fund. And then when I get to debt service fund, I'll talk about what that entails. They've got a healthy contingency. So the other thing to note here, besides the debt service fund, at any time, if the city feels that we can't withstand transferring that money, we will pull that transfer back or not do the transfer. So just because we've designated 300,000 to go to capital improvement fund to help with some of the projects, the city can choose that the water fund does not contribute that year because we had a huge, I better not jinx this. So
You're talking about roofs
that
falling
we have
in?
a huge unexpected expense. So yeah, I don't mean to be, but just planning for it, it doesn't mean because I've appropriated or the city's appropriated that we spend it. So we can even reduce further, that can alter depending on what happens.
Just for clarification, to what degree can a department or an agency shift between any of these uses? Shift funds between any of these uses?
They can, they
Can
have,
they not at
they
all?
cannot at all. So, water fund, the departments cannot ask for any of that. So on a monthly basis, I'm watching, Brian comes and tells me Grant Street sewer collapsed.
Again.
So at that moment, we have to make a decision. But water and sewer are very eclectic in their uses. Streets are very eclectic. The general fund can transfer anywhere. But water and sewer and SDCs are attributed to master plans. The water and sewers are to their particular departments. And then they're saving towards saving things in their department. So it is a judgment call, not by a department head. It would be Shannon and I discussing how are we going to resolve this? What are we going to do?
And of course, with council oversight.
Oh yeah, that all comes to you.
So to summarize what you're saying is that our water bill pays the water utilities in this town.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And we still have work to do. So, and then we'll get to that too.
And if we have an unexpected opportunity rather than tragedy, we're prepared.
Yes, that's why you always hold a good contingency. One of the things when we were seeking financing for the Civic Center, most cities run a contingency of 3 to 8%. We always strive 10 to 20, always closer to 20 as much as we can. So the city really tries to be a good fiscal steward and plan for an unexpected opportunity.
Or crisis.
Yes. So.
We try to be positive.
Yes. Reframing me. I'm budget fatigued. So sewer, and that is going to be on page 73. It is basically the same story as water, almost identical, 6%. For the people that aren't here, haven't been to a budget committee meeting, I wanted to explain that the land lease for agricultural use for $3,000, that goes to a local farmer who by state statute, we have to have someone farm behind the lagoons out at the lagoon site. And he actually comes in and pumps water. He'll plant crops that will complement like clover with the gray water. So we're using the gray water. It has to be an accepted use, but he actually leases the land from us and rotates his crops out there and uses our gray water to do that. And on page 74, utilities, sewer rates are up And we are in the middle of, I don't know how this is gonna land. Right now, we've got a power issue out there with the upgrades. And that will remedy itself, but then we're gonna be doing a lot of upgrades you'll see in capital improvement fund for that were required by DEQ. So that one is a best guess. That could adjust down significantly, but I didn't want the appropriation to be off. The only other thing you're going to see that's huge this year in particular is down the lines that says supplies and maintenance. You'll see that in 22, we had 100,000, we adopted 95. We're already at 111 with our third sewer break in the last month. So we do have failing sewer lines, and that is what drives the supplies and maintenance. If we can upgrade the line, I can use some SDCs, but sewer SDCs are lower right now because it helped facilitate and pay for that Hahn Creek pump station that just went out. So that is why sewers, supplies and maintenance are higher, and that is also an opportunity fluctuation. So that's where you're seeing there. For their capital outlay, it's their portion for a computer replacement. We usually replace 1 or 2 computers a year. And then sewer equipment is, they are paying for a portion of this snowplow, and then we're going to be putting some cameras out at the lagoon. We've had some criminal mischief out there, so we're going to get
Criminal mischief in the middle of the sewer lagoon.
yeah, well,
Think
to the
about that.
gates. And, you know, we've got stuff out there that usually our criminal mischief is around juveniles typically. And I don't know how they find these locations, but they do.
Although the city did have a boat out there in the lagoons that did get stolen.
Yes, they did. They did.
Think about what it took to do that.
So it is out there. There's not us, there is a gate. The gate's been broken multiple times. So we want to get some we're gonna be doing a lot of work out there, so we want to get some security and on that construction. Then for their transfers, they are not transferring anything this year because of the large amount of sewer breaks to the capital improvement. They're doing their 50,000. If we may not transfer that, we'll see if we can get through to June. Vehicle equipment, and then their debt service, and debt service will happen. That's mandatory. And then their contingency. Any questions on sewer? Now we're going to the big boy. Did I skip tourism? I skipped tourism.
I noticed that, but I thought you did it intentionally.
I did not. I do want to talk to it a little bit. Oh, I didn't tab it. That's my bad. Thank you. Yes, it's why I have you here. It is on page 60. Back. So tourism fund is based off of funds we receive by having VRBOs. It's based on 70% of those funds. 30% of these funds go to the general fund. So I'm projecting for FY24 that we're gonna get 100,000, 70,000. Oh, I put it in grants. So 100,000, 70, and 30.
You're looking at.
I'm sorry, I was looking at my notes. So I am actually off on revenue for $10,000.
Where,
And so that is on page 60, that 50,000 should be of 20,000, 70.
It should be 70.
Yes,
Are you talking about transient room tax?
yes, that should be 70,000.
Oh, okay.
So, and that will be noted when it moves to city council, and I'll change that. So 30,000 will go to general fund. 70,000 goes here. So the tourism money can only be spent on tourism. We're driving tourism from 60 miles outside. It isn't for events inside. We're bringing people from the outside. And we're gonna try to create a way, the Christmas lights in Carlton are actually starting to drive out of towners. That people are coming for their photos to somehow capture that data on what's driving that. But currently, as the status with the tourism fund is, we had a committee, they weren't meeting regularly, or we were canceling and we kept resending agendas. So then, council approved that we would have a tourism volunteer group. And then, Shannon just reinvigorated that a month and a half ago. They had their first meeting. This year, we're gonna task them with creating some banners. They've already got new rack cards with QR codes that we can track, but creating some marketing material to bring people from the 60 miles out in. And so they're in the early stages of that. We do have revenue for them to work with. The special projects that you see is for 100,000. That is just a placeholder for what they might bring forward. It has to, so the tourism fund is driven by statute, and it has to meet those statute guidelines.
So
You don't
does-
yet have an idea of what that would actually constitute.
Banners, marketing material, maybe having a statistical way to track people coming into an event. Bringing in there could be a multitude of things. So the tourism is a small fund. There's not a lot of money, but there is money to try to attract things. And the QR code, which we did last year, was really nice to be able to track who's picking up our rack cards in Portland. And they just opened the Portland Tourism Center again after a long absence of not being open. So we're looking at getting some cards there and replenishing our stock. But the tourism committee will be bringing it forth. We're just putting the appropriation there in case they bring a project forth that can be used.
So does a portion of the transit room tax go to the general fund?
30%,
30%. So I thought, okay.
30%. And right now it's working well with the state. So the state collects all our revenue, and they are responsible for the collection, and they're responsible for monitoring it. Amy, our planning and development person, every month searches for new VRBOs, and so often when she reaches out and we see a new listing that isn't reporting, they'll either pull it off the market or become into compliance. So the city monitors it. We're currently up to 50. Just met someone in the park today talking to me about it. They bought one of the Quimby's behind the big civic center. Yeah.
Townhouses.
Wanting to know more about the city. So I thought that was interesting. I was thinking we should have a tourism page on the website, but, so that's what drives it. And all this is that, so by Oregon statute and local budget law, I have to be 0. And we don't put it into contingency because there's not going to be an emergency in tourism. So it goes up to special projects. But it doesn't mean that it'll be appropriated. It has to be approved.
Was I hearing that correctly, that there are now something like 50 effectively bed and breakfast or
Vacation
vacation
rentals.
rental type places in Carlton?
Mhm.
So about somewhere around 1 out of 20 residences in Carlton now
I don't
are,
remember. My head brain's too
there are
tired.
about 1,000
Yeah.
or more or less residences, I think.
Go inside city limits. We just did the connections. It was about 1169, something like that.
Yeah.
So yes, are they active? No, a lot of them are in the middle or decide this isn't for me, and they ebb and flow. We have a strong 24, if that makes sense.
About 24 that are very persistent.
Yes, very persistent, have been here. Yoka on Main Street, the yellow one, on
The one in back of our house.
yes. So there's some persistent ones, and then ones that kind of try it on and then untry it. So we do keep a close eye on it, and Amy's very diligent about searching, and it's pretty easy.
I just said the number sounded a little larger than I was expecting.
The city council actually just discussed this issue a couple of months ago to determine whether or not there needed to be vacation rental regulations. And Amy, and unfortunately, I do not remember the percentage that she gave, but she said the percentage of vacation rentals has actually stayed steady, even though the actual number has increased based upon the number of incoming homes. And so the percentage of vacation rentals versus full-time residents has actually stayed the same over the last 2 years.
That's largely because of the new subdivisions coming.
Yeah. So sorry for skipping tourism, but it was good we went back because I saw that.
I have a question for special projects. It seems like the prior period, we didn't use it very much,
That is-
15,000. Is that something we could look into, maybe hiring an agency or something, or a professional service to help us use that fund and help the city get more?
Certainly, and actually, we're looking at an economical way to do that because coming from a city who did hire an agency, most agencies would wipe out this budget in 1 year. And that would just be for the professional services. It wouldn't necessarily bring in the revenues to justify the expense. However, there is another city nearby, and because we're just in initial negotiations, I'm not gonna say who it is. But they are also looking at their economic development and their tourism. And so we're actually going to meet with them and see what kind of partnership opportunities that we can learn from each other and leverage our mutual resources and see what we can do.
So you could partner the whole county type of thing, like you could market the whole Yamhill County or wineries and stuff like that, but is that something you can do?
Based upon statute, we need to focus on marketing Carlton. Now, if we were partnering with Yamhill County, we could, again, use those funds. Yamhill County would need to use them to market Yamhill County. We would market Carlton. Not to say we wouldn't use one resource to market that. So let's say, for example, we hired you, but as a joint partnership. But your responsibility would be to market Carlton and also to market Yamhill County
But you could use the same
person.
Yeah.
Or entity.
and make it a little cheaper, bro.
Yes, so we're looking at creative ways in order to dip our toe in the water of how we can
Okay.
economically.
With that, going to where I've got to talk the most, page 77. This is the capital improvement fund. It's a one-sheeter, but it's not enough to explain it. We are proposing $26 million. That's with some transfers in. You'll see the transfers are significantly less. From the estimate for this year is 981,000, and then the proposed is 550. But I want to get at, and as far as revenues, we've got a donation line item, interest that's now going into capital improvement fund. And then you can see the big line grants. It's basically 16.1 about 0.1 of grants that we're anticipating to receive for the capital improvement fund. That's a big deal. Along with these grants, there comes some city matches. It's built into the requirements. We've got it spelled out for you back in the capital improvement plan. But I just want to talk to you about going through the requirements for the facilities and projects, which is the 7 million. So the special projects is the Civic Center, the Public Works Building, and the Main Street utilities. That is built into that. And at this point, we do have a loan for 8.8 million, but we don't know, the contractor's bid is at 7.2, although we do have our first change order. We've had some value engineering. We had some unexpected surprises, oil drums, a driveway, an extra foundation. We've now got a belly and a sewer line. The The site will be clean when it's all done, but as in construction, we've got little stuff along the way. I have to tell you though, the contractor and the architect look for any way they can to keep us in value engineering. I've never seen this on a project before. They really care and they know we mean it. So as we get down, we don't know what that final figure is gonna be. So just to kind of give you a heads up on that. We're on 2 change orders, the oil, contaminated soil, evacuation, and the ramp.
It's actually 4 change
4
orders,
change
but
orders.
3 of them are actually cost reductions at this.
Yes, we have 3 change orders with cost reductions. So every avenue we can go. Park projects, this year we are going to be working on the power for Ladd Park, which will lead into the basketball cover. But park right now, we're gonna just do a small project on that until we're gonna look at some grant opportunities to help for the basketball cover. I'm just not sure we can get that grant in, and that will be about 75,000. Transportation is a. Mhm.
And a lot of these projects, and she mentioned the basketball cover, we're also looking for opportunities to add solar because that is one of the grant opportunities from the federal government right now, which would also feed back into our PGE costs because we're feeding back into the grid. So I
Yeah,
apologize
nope.
to take you up here.
Thank you. Nope, that works out good. Transportation is 1.8 million. Some of the grant money is going towards that, and that's for West Main Street transportation plan update. And then some paving and pedestrian projects, which is nice when we're able to facilitate some transfers in to help with that. Water is big, 3 million. And that is for the southeast of town water system, kind of by in the elementary school area, all that water system. And we're trying to get that fire flow into that elementary. So it's a big deal. That's the one, it's got a big grant sitting on that. 2.5 million is sitting towards that. Working on Main Street, Cooch to Pine, some new water lines, the steel reservoir upgrade. Yamhill to Monroe to Lincoln water lines, and then Grant Street car to Yamhill. So we do have some monies coming in, and it's a very industrious endeavor, but I think we can pull it off.
Those water funds are coming for, are those all basically grant monies or grant plus match or?
There's grants, match, capital improvement contributions where we had money saved aside for water projects. Some SDC funds are gonna help. So we have a bleed of accounts that will help. So not one is pulling the whole weight.
And also some of this grant funding is still pending. Some of this is currently federal requested money. So we don't know that we've secured it at this point in time, but we have to have it budgeted in our capital plan to show that we are prepared to match it.
If it doesn't come through, then what?
Then we don't do that
We don't do
project.
the project. And Randy, that's actually a good reminder. So just because the city appropriates does not mean the city spends. So like I was talking about for transfers, if we don't think it warrants it, we won't transfer. If we have a different type of an emergency opportunity, if we have a different opportunity or something falls through, that doesn't happen, it does not spend. So what you would see is for estimates, it would be significantly less for the following year. Appropriation does not mean spending, it just means it's there to spend if we can do it. Sewer, this is the big one. Now, this is DEQ required. This is our wastewater treatment plant upgrade. We do have a secured loan for that for 5.8 million grant. Did I say loan?
Yeah.
So we do have secured grant monies for that, and we are gonna be getting our first disbursement off within the next couple weeks. Pine Street, Main to Monroe, the Civic Center sanitary line, which is about 600,
some headworks improvement, which is right here, that's about 700 DEQ mandated, and Grant Street and East Main. So that is where a majority of the grants are sitting, 12.1 million if we secure all the financing, but 5.8 is definite. And then storm is very itty bitty. We want to start working on a master plan update for storm and tie that into our TMDLs. So that's 100,000. We have a good contingency, almost 1.8 million. So that is very healthy for our capital improvement fund. Any questions on capital improvement fund? I know it's our biggest hit, but it's all got all these grants and stuff.
Good stuff happening.
Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff.
Well, Christie, I'm curious about the storm projects. What is that
So
Exactly.
storm drains,
for the water
yeah, for the water.
specific?
Yes,
Okay, good.
so it's for storm water.
Right.
And typically, stormwater doesn't have much funding. We've got a little bit in SDCs. But we need to get a plan to spend money out of what little we've got and then have a plan forward. But also too, it gives us a placeholder once we have a good master plan to go forward and get some more funding.
So the master plan is critical to justify why we're applying for a lot of grant funding. So that's why the $100,000 is slated just for the contract for the engineering or whomever would come in as an expert in order to formulate our stormwater master plan. So then we can use that as a stepping stone to be able to apply for grant funding.
So very exciting. We're starting to build that, because that's also state mandated, the Mercury TMDL. We don't dream this stuff up. Or fish flows. Okay, the next big fund is SDCs. This is. So it's, the page number bled into the top, I apologize, page 92, into the title bar. We'll have it adjusted for the next one. Overall, we have stormwater master plan, has some money set aside in here. Continuing infrastructure improvements. There is a small transfer to the parks CIF to help get that power and for park master plan improvements. And then we based this revenue on 30 homes being built. The caveat on that, so all the revenues are based on interest and how many homes are going to be built. So that's where all the revenue is driving from. Then what you see is operating contingency. So if you look at page 92, all the funds will be the same. Operating contingency, a transfer out if it's helping the capital improvement fund. And the big thing here is when you see water projects for 978, 863, that is a balancing to the budget. So that is sitting there if we need it, if something breaks, that is in the master plan, we have the funds to repair it. That does not mean we're spending it, it's sitting there. And so you'll see that that's pretty much all through. The big difference here is the revenues for the sewer system are a little lighter. And the reason for that is part of the condition of building the Hahn Creek pump station, the Bear Meadows 2 paid ahead their SDCs to help contribute to that build of the pump station. So we won't be collecting some revenues for that development. So, and I'm not sure when Bear Meadows. As you can see, it's a best guess on what you think's gonna happen or what may happen, so it's kind of that balancing act. So if JR Meadows 3 comes in, we might see some activity, some additional. We do in totality, all throughout the SDCs, they're placeholders for projects that is contingent on what's in the master plan. So I can't just decide, oh, East Main Street needs additional money in capital improvement and transfer it if it's not something master plan relevant. If we do a sewer break, if we don't upgrade that pipe,
SDCs can't pay for it. So it's contingent upon what the activity is going to happen. And SDCs is going to be playing a part in some of the capital improvement fund projects on anything that is acceptable in the plan. And so in the capital improvement plan that was behind it, you'll see in their master plan references that gives us that flexibility in spending. And that's in that big document where we are guessing for the next 5 years how we're paying for things. So the big thing for this isn't each fund, it's going to be for page 102 for the total. We're gonna have a beginning fund balance of 2.8 billion. And we are projecting an ending fund balance of 3.5. That will fluctuate depending on our opportunities. Now I'm not gonna be able to get that word out of my head.
It's not a bad word.
It's not a bad word. We've got a good contingency. We're only transferring a small portion out for some upgrade that was relevant. Material and services, that is typically an engineering cost, professional service relevant towards the SDCs. And then capital outlay is all project related. And with SDCs, it typically carries a larger balance until we used over $1 million in SDCs for the Hahn Creek pump station this year. So it was very much there. We had to have that pump station to further that development.
Is that paid for now?
Yes, it was nice and it was out of this fund. So that development is critical to help with the infrastructure.
I'm just thinking about being excited about a sewer station being completely paid for. Just the idea that we've got something that we don't owe money on.
It's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice, and like the new fence finally got up and it hides the look of the station, and it's a good, really solid product. I think Kevin once said, if we're gonna build a floating dock, why not make it for longevity? And that's what this fence is. So it's another opportunity for quality. The next fund is the GEO bond. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about this than I normally do. It's on page 104. But if you look at 103 to page before, the bond was a 2015 by statute. We have to create its own fund, and it was not allowed to blend with the debt service fund. It had to be its own fund. So any GEO bond by the voters has to be by itself. And then I have to collect for that separately. The full construction is 3.77%. You can see the original loan with interest. Our current balance is 951,000. The payoff year of 2035. So we're trying to make sure you guys are aware of when the debts are coming on and off, and including the interest.
Are these payments, do they vary at all by year, or are they just standard all each year out?
No, they vary. If you look at page 104, where you look at total debt service, and it's through Western Alliance, you'll see the principal and interest kind of fluctuate. This year, it's going to be 68. They give me an amortization schedule with how much I am to collect. So the interesting thing for you to note is, as a GEO bond, and we are collecting taxpayers' monies for the pool, I am not allowed to have a huge contingency. I'm not allowed to over collect. I have to, the city, the city has to be as close as possible so we're not misusing taxpayers' funds. And you can see in the estimate, we're going to come in at a negative fund balance of 1,279. But by the time we will have $315 for the proposed, we still keep it very tight. So we will be asking for 71,000, and the county, I give them that number, and then they impose that tax upon the taxpayer and split it across our in-town residents. And so every year I have to provide in a resolution what I think is going to be the closest that we need to go. So you will always see this tight. This is just an accounting of that. but you have to try your hardest never to over collect. So,
And if you over collected, they won't let you over collect to pay off early?
no, as it's a taxpayer, because can you imagine getting your tax bill and instead of being 69 cents, it's, $120, it's.
Oh,
You're,
no.
yeah, you see what, so we can't, it has to follow the amortization schedule.
You cannot pay off until 2034, so.
20, yeah, you are correct. And we work really diligently. We get the tax reports in October. Really keeping an eye on, we have to actually create a distribution. Every year it changes. And so when we receive a tax payment from the county, it doesn't say how much is the pool. It only gives us a lump sum. We have to do this very complicated formula for the pool for each year, what the percentage was that we were collecting for taxes, and then take that and disperse it to it. And they do not have the software to support it. So they can't say, we did collect 69,000 for the pool this year. So we have to go off of our percentage. It's a little aggravating because the spreadsheet is getting very long because it's been since 2015. And then every year you have to calculate a different percentage since 2015 for the tax collection that they did in that year. I'm finding it Morgan because she now does that journal entry. But that's how particular they are. And the city could be in audit finding in trouble with the state if we intentfully over collected.
Is the contingency, is
Just,
that number for people who aren't paying their taxes?
yeah, we can, and we have to guess who's delinquent. There is county on average is between 3% and 4% of delinquent. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. So that contingency if we're not getting quite enough, which is what happened the year before. Right? So, but we can't even hold a big contingency. It's a guess. We've done pretty good. And then the next one is debt service. And I want to take a look at the schedule on the front, and that's page 105. So we've got it organized by year of payoff. We've got the sewer master plan is due to come off by 2025. And the original loan on that was 40,000 and it's down to 17. The water bond is coming off in 2027. So the balance, as you can see, is getting down there significantly. Those will be really helpful, keeping our debt service waters low. But then it's not till the 30s where we see some more coming off. The Civic Center will be on there till 2043.
Years.
Celebrate that.
On page 106. So debt service fund is a vehicle equipment fund. You are not allowed to have contingency. Oh, and also the geo bond, that's actually unappropriated contingency. So and that's by state statute. This 163,000 is the water bond had a requirement written at the time of the bond that we'd always keep one payment in reserve in case of default. So typically the proposed would be close to zero, but because of that water bond requirement, we've been holding it for years.
And so at the end of this next year, it should be something similar.
Yeah, yes, it'll be pretty close. And then in 25, we'll be getting like almost to zero up at the top. You'll see the transfers from the three departments in as revenues. These are for all the debt listed below. So you have the general fund, then you have the water fund and the sewer fund. And then all the debt is listed. The only thing of note is that first line under debt service, the Meadow Lake principal that says 45,000. There's an additional 65,000 due, and that 65,000 by agreement in the urban renewal, I'll talk about that. They make $65,000 payment towards that loan every year. And I'll talk about that when we're in urban renewal. All the rest these are all from the appropriation schedules for our debt between principal and interest. And then that unappropriated contingency is just that payment in reserve. Any questions on debt service? The last fund is the vehicle equipment fund. It's relatively small. On page 108. One thing that's kind of nice to know, as we buy new vehicles, we take our old vehicles to surplus. So that's what that miscellaneous revenue, you can see actual in 2022, and then we just received $3,800 for the one of the old 2012 Chargers. The state holds a small portion of those proceeds, but those stay in here to help facilitate the purchases of other vehicles. We've got actually 2 public works that will be aging out over the next couple of years. Contingency in here is also unappropriated. We're proposing vehicles and equipment of 102,749, and that is if Public Works Director is successful in getting a vac truck this year, a trailer and truck. If it doesn't, that will roll over to beginning fund balance for next year towards that purchase. It doesn't go away. So that is the end of the budget presentation. Is there any questions I didn't answer? Okay, then I think the public comments. Yes.
So I hereby open the floor to public comment on the proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24. If you wish to speak, use the hand raise function on Zoom, and Morgan will call your name. Once called, please state your name and address.
I see no hands raised at this time.
We will now close the public comments. The Budget Committee must now vote to establish the fiscal year 24 tax rate. Are there any staff recommendations?
Yes. So the tax rate of 5.0098 in 1997, it was frozen by Measure 50, which created the permanent tax rate. We cannot go above that tax rate. So we are recommending that you approve that rate per 1,000 of assessed valuations to begin July 3rd, 2023.
I will entertain a motion to approve and set the fiscal year 23-24 tax rate at 5.0098%.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. The Budget Committee must now vote to approve the fiscal year 24 budget. Are there staff recommendations?
The staff is recommending the Budget Committee approve the FY24 proposed budget to approved and move it towards City Council for the June 2nd meeting. Yes.
I will entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 24 proposed budget.
So moved
Second.
with the changes on the
Tourism.
tourism.
And we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
All right. Mayor Linda Watkins, how do you vote?
Aye.
Council President Shirley Ward Muller, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Kevin Skipper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Guillermo Brandao, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Carolyn Thompson Riser, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor David Samuel Hill, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member or committee chair Brian Rake, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Sarah Meyer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee member Randy Staples, how do you vote?
Aye.
And committee member Robin Geck, how do you vote? You have 2 absent. Motion carries.
Thank you, Morgan.
We will now adjourn the Carlton Budget Committee meeting and open Urban Renewal Agency Budget meeting. at 7:49 PM.
I think that's you, Brian. Versus Linda.
Oh. I'm still in the lead here.
Well,
Yeah, I think he's,
oh, it's showing that, oh, it's nomination again. I guess we didn't clarify in the first, so we'll have to go with you, Linda, first. I'm sorry.
well, I need my script. So we are opening, we've closed one meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so we're opening the Urban Renewal District meeting. And, okay, and we need a fair for the Urban Renewal District meeting.
Yes, can we just get the time there and Morgan do a roll call vote after the time?
Roll call for attendance.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. So, okay, it is now
7:50.
7:50. Okay, we'll go with 7:50. And we're opening the Urban Renewal meeting. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Linda Watkins,
Here.
Council President Shirley Ward Mullen. Here. Counselor Kevin Skipper,
Here.
Counselor Jeremy Brandau.
Here.
Counselor Grant Erickson is absent. Counselor Carolyn Thompson Riser. Here. Counselor David Samuel here, Eric Hill. Committee chair,
Trying to
or
save
committee
time.
member Brian Rake.
Here.
Committee member Dean Catherman is excused absent. Committee member Sarah Meyer.
Here.
Committee member Randy Staples.
Here.
And committee member Robin Geck.
Here.
Okay, so we are going into the election of the Urban Renewal Committee Chairman. Urban Renewal Budget Committee Chairperson. Let's see. So I will nominate Ryan Rake.
Second.
Could we have roll call, please?
It's not.
Yes, it is. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. Okay, Brian, it's back to you.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee minutes from May 12th. 2022.
It's May 10.
So we're looking for approval of the minutes from May 10th, 2022. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now staff will present the proposed budget message.
Okay, so this is going to be. Let's start on page 6. So, page 6 has 2 good charts to show that our annual property increase. Urban renewal started in FY 14. You can see down below for resources and requirements, our beginning fund balance is running at 33%. Our projects are at 35%. And our revenues at 18, and we'll talk about the taxes on that particular component. One of the big questions on urban renewal is, when is urban renewal over? When are we done with the special taxing district? Urban renewal is set to retire in 2031. The only caveat, when it retires, that means we just stop collecting taxes. It doesn't mean urban renewal will close down. They're obligated to Meadow Lake until the year 2038. So we will hold funds in urban renewal to make that $65,000 payment throughout, but we will no longer be collecting revenue. So you'll see as we get closer, we'll be less doing projects, but making sure that we have money to hold and pay for that debt service. But in 2031 is where the urban renewal district expires.
Is that at the end? We can never establish a new one.
We can apply and establish a new urban renewal with goals and objectives behind it
The same area. Yeah.
in the same area
Okay.
or expanded areas or however we choose to do that. Yeah, the urban renewal was instrumental in the pool house. It's been instrumental in downtown development. It's been instrumental in the Meadow Lake, getting water capacity and helping in that water loss that was at a high rate coming into town. It has been helpful currently on some downtown street happenings, so it's had some impact with that. If it has such a wide variety by goals, but we're working on master plans. We're working on the downtown. It's gonna help with the main street utilities, things that coordinate with why it was developed in the first place. And it's really had a significant impact. In totality, they estimate that the value of the urban renewal fund by the time it expires will be about 3 million. 1 million of that was towards Meadow Lake. 1 million has been spent on the pool and some other things. And then we've got another million that we can help as we get these federal monies and grants, that it will go hand in hand as we need money. It was a very valuable tool for the city for funds we wouldn't have normally gotten. So in the budget itself, it does also receive interest. And then you'll see here in the current taxes and prior years taxes, it has a slight increase every year of the tax it collects as the property values go up. Professional services is taking a jump with the audit. And then say we want to entertain a new urban renewal, we could do that out of professional. Materials and services is pretty elementary. The other thing we have to do is pay for our audit out of here and the state fees for the audit. So when you have an audit, you also have to pay the state when you have an audit. So
Excuse me,
yeah.
we have to pay the state audits?
No, we have to pay the state a fee depending on the size of our budget per audit. So they contribute, yeah, I think urban renewals on $250.
Well, what does the fee go for?
They administer, all our audits are online in this state and they regulate our audits. So like if the city chose not to do an audit, we would be in trouble with the state. So it's in their regulations. They have a whole audit division. So, and they're pretty particular. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that, or it's pretty well?
It helps pay their administrative costs for managing all the audits for all cities and other entities that they have to do throughout the state, similar to what we charge for planning fees for our administrative costs for pre-applications, just as Christy referred to for applications and they never come to submission.
Okay.
So, it's a little dance. I can tell you, when I was at the state, I was the receipting department and we receipted 33 billion per year. The fees we had to pay to the state auditor and then treasury involvement and all that to monitor those regulations was huge. But 33 billion needs to be watched. So it's a necessary evil, I guess, just like we pay for the auditor. And then we also pay for, we have a bank reconciliation person come once a month to look at all our deposits, all our receipts, making sure that we have good internal controls. It's a safety measure. So, and there are some cities that weren't filing audits, and then that state goes after those cities because it could be misuse of taxpayer money.
How they recoup some of the expense that they incur at administrative level,
Another
So-
hand in the pot.
similar to what we're looking at. Or may have to look at for streets or street lights.
Projects, it shows 536,000. Again, like SDCs, they don't have a firm project tied to it. It leaves us some in contingency. It leaves us some appropriation as needed for opportunities. And for assets and contributions that weren't thought of before the budget was prepared. If not used, it rolls over, which is why you see the beginning fund balance keep increasing. Because urban renewal just uses a tad for here, but we're going into a big project year. And a lot of the goals from urban renewal are tagged to those projects, so it's gonna be very handy for us this year. Contingency is just a holder in case of an emergency. And behind the sheet, you can see the urban renewal area on the page following, so page 8. So it just kind of gives you an idea of the area, and it could have some expansion. If we ever decided to do urban renewal again to help with some more what I call arterial transportation needs after we get the TSP done. And with that, that is the presentation of the urban renewal budget.
All right, I hereby open the floor to public comments on the proposed urban renewal budget for fiscal year 23-24. If you wish to speak, use the raise hand feature, and Morgan will call you.
I see no hands raised at this time.
All right, we will now close the public comments. The Urban Renewal Budget Committee must now vote to approve the fiscal year 24 proposed urban renewal budget. Are there staff recommendations?
The staff is recommending that the budget committee move the urban renewal budget from proposed to approved to be heard by the urban renewal agency in June.
I will now entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 24 proposed urban renewal budget.
I move to approve the proposed urban renewal budget for the year 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Linda Watkins, how do you vote?
Aye.
Council President Shirley Ward Mullen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Kevin Skipper, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Jeremy Brendel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Grant Erickson is absent. Councilor Carolyn Thompson Riser.
Aye.
Councilor David Samuel Hill, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee Chair Brian Rake, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee Member Dean Catherman is absent. Committee Member Sarah Meyer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee Members Randy Staples, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Committee Member Robin Deck, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I appreciate the questions. As Shannon knows, not many people ask me questions financially, so it's a nice opportunity to talk finances.
With that, we will adjourn the meeting. Now, I would like to say thank you to Kristen. I know how hard you work.
So much, yes.
So,
I'm a little groggy. I started to get dyslexic towards the end.